Everybody, this session, for your information, is public and is being live streamed. And we wanted to put, if we can, a little bit of structure around the questions, because sometimes we go, you know, from this to this to this wildly. So we thought we would start with the level of service options, if you have questions around those. Then go on to the capital project adjustments, so that would be the pools, the skate park, transport, etc. Then the consultation items, water, waste, and the airport perpetual investment fund. That was a new acronym I just saw before me, PIF. So I was just rattled by a new acronym, and then sort of all other items. So if we could structure it in that way, that would be good. But I understand if we, you know, there might be a little bit of looseness about that, but we're trying to make sure we have everybody in the room to answer your questions. So first of all, Stephen's just going to talk a little bit about the question process. Have you got a question about the process?
Just, is there a way to make it really clear what subject we're talking about at what time? I don't know if it's to bring it up on...
Oh, good idea, but I will announce it as well from the chair. But first of all, I think Stephen's going to talk about a little bit about the questions that they've already been received.
Kia ora, councillors. Yes, this is the first session of the Q&A. We've got another one on Wednesday, and of course there's some time planned in the actual meeting, and we've also got the written Q&A process, and we've received probably around about 100 or more from various councillors. So we are busy collating answers to those, and the answers will come out on Wednesday. So I guess my suggestion would be that probably use this time to probably not go over the same ground that, you know, we will be responding to through those written Q&As, and possibly take more of a strategic approach. But that would just be my suggestion, and I know there's a lot of interest in a lot of information that we circulated on Thursday, but in saying that, it's the culmination of 24 workshops. Obviously, it's brought together in a comprehensive fashion in terms of the report, but largely all of the material has been traversed one way or the other.
Thank you. So we'll move on to questions about the level of service options. So, yes, Councillor McNulty.
Assume fees and charges come under this one.
We did have that scheduled later.
Oh, sorry, I thought I didn't hear it.
But
No, I'll wait for the appropriate time.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Cool. Kia ora, Steve, and thank you. I think this is a busy time for you, and 100 question coming your way is not a good one. Look, Steve, I do understand. I just want to get it a bit of, for the community to have a perspective of what happened the last couple of days, regards to Brooklyn community being included in the long-term plan as a service cut. How did that happen? And you said there was a background discussions, and what that discussion looks like. Was it with the mayor or the rest, or how that happened?
Talking about the library specifically? Okay.
Okay, so when we were in the workshop and we talked about library hours, there was a request for other options, and we had been working on a series of other options, which you saw in the detailed table, and inadvertently we loaded the wrong table. It was completely an administrative error within our team, so there was no political involvement whatsoever in that, and we called that out as soon as we kind of got feedback through the media.
And are you asking, Councillor, about sort of the other proposal to reduce library hours? Is that affecting Brooklyn?
Basically, what I want to find out is how that was included to begin with, even though it's administrative mistakes. How did we end up including even from the beginning? Was it a discussion with the mayor, with other councillors, and how that?
So that was staff advice, and we traversed those various options, and that was on the basis that council had asked us to look at what options are available. So that's totally up to the staff advice in terms of what was put there, part of the background workings.
just one more question to follow up. So after that staff advice and during discussions, how do you decide we're not going to go with this one? Was it, so if it's coming from the staff itself, who suggested not to include it then?
The reason that we've got that suggestion around reduced opening hours, that has been consistent through the various workshops that we've had with council back on the 31st of January. That was identified in one of the tables that that's what we'll be bringing back.
Could I ask, I haven't got any more hands up, so I've got a question about Candala Pool, and specifically about the $60 to $80 range of subsidy per visit, and what sits behind that number. If you could sort of explain it to me a little bit more.
Certainly. So for the Candala Pool, we basically have taken the number of customers that we currently have, or the number of visits that we currently have. We've looked at a model where there's 50% additional, 100% additional, and 200% additional visits as a result of the investment put into running Candala Pool, in other words, the upgrade. We looked at the total OPEX, including all our normal overheads that we associate with running services, and what that amount is for the upgraded pool, which is around about 1.2 million plus. And so then we basically divided the total number of visits by the OPEX, and that's what the number we come to. So in the case of the same number of visits as current with the upgraded pool OPEX cost, it'd be a ratepayer subsidy of approximately $120 per visit. With 50% additional, $79.26, so they're $80. With 100% additional, $59.59, so they're $60. And with 200% additional, it would be a $39 subsidy. So therefore, we took the two middle scenarios, the 50% additional and the 100% additional, and that gives us the $60 to $80 subsidy.
Thank you. I don't remember seeing it in the papers, but what sort of proportion of pool visits across the region are to Candala Pool?
A moment.
Councillors, it's Matt Bialy here. The total is less than 1% of our total visits a year. So we normally have between 1.1 and 1.2 million visits to our pool facilities. Candala Pool over the last 4 years averaged 10,337 or 39 visits.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just a few more on Candala Pool. What's next, like in terms of the next average subsidy in the pool network after Candala Pool? Which pool is it in? What's the subsidy?
Mac, have you got that one?
No, I haven't got the exact accounts in front of me right now. I can go away and find it. But from my knowledge, it would be, I believe, Tawa or Thornwood.
Okay. At $4 million to close Candala Pool, that just feels relatively high for that work. Are you able to elaborate a bit further, James, on what that entails?
Sure. So closing the pool and landscaping it requires removal of all existing pool infrastructure and buildings, regrading of the contours to form new benched lawn areas, putting in accessible paving to the new contours to provide steady gradients and accessibility to lawns, pavilion and beyond, a new pavilion building which will be open walled with built-in tables and barbecue, a footbridge over the stream which is rebuilt longer to enable a widened unimpeded stream flow, existing stream bed to be widened, planted with a new curved stone wall to the recreation area, and significant riparian planting and redirection of stream bed and relocation of the existing toilets.
Okay, thank you. And last one, if the community were to bring some new ideas or there was a possibility of some private capital that comes out in the consultation should we vote to close, would that be possible to be considered, or is it too late at that point after Thursday?
So in terms of Thursday, what you're making decisions on is your proposed long-term plan. That is still subject to community feedback. Through that process, you need to be open to the views of the community as we go out for consultation. While it's not a key consultation matter, people are still able to give feedback on any element of the long-term plan. And so you would be able to hear those views and make your decision accordingly when it comes to adopting in June.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, I'd like to know about some of the more significant things. In the housing program...
we don't need to comment on other people's questions. But thanks.
That's all right, my pleasure. The housing program, which currently is at $40.5 million in operating, is going next year to go up to $53 million and then up to nearly $63 million. Can someone please explain this huge increase in terms of operating costs and what's driving that?
I'd have to get back to you on that, Councillor Randall.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor, and also we were sort of trying to focus on the level of service recommendations. Is this part that might be why you heard questions about pools, etc.?
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, just let me know when. Okay, I wasn't sure when that element would come up.
Yeah.
Because housing as a service. In terms of Takina, it's costing us $20 million and that's not going down. Why isn't it going down in terms of operating subsidy?
Okay, Andrea, do you have a... No,
Stephen. I was just going to say,
yeah.
I think that's a detailed question that we'd have to come back to you on, Tony, along with you've kind of asked similar questions around other activities, right? So we will add that to the list.
Okay. So I know we've had suggestions from officers that we cut library hours and pools. I noticed that between the marina and the golf course is $1 million a year. We're going towards supporting that. Can we get some understanding why that was prioritised over the cuts that have been suggested?
I'll have to come back to you on that one, Councillor.
Okay.
I can just add to the marina. The marina does have a user charge system that recovers largely its operating costs. Golf course also has an RNF policy, so there's income as well for that.
Okay. Can I go? I'll go back on the list. Thanks.
That's fine. Get another one. Go.
Okay. In terms of another service, well, I'm not sure if this is a service. Are we talking about climate change?
I think I'm struggling to get people to structure it, so we'll just ask your questions and we'll do it. We tried.
I mean, again, we've had these proposed cuts and increases in fees and new revenue streams. One of the services that we're supporting, I'll say service, is the climate change response. Climate change response is increasing from 4 million to nearly 8 million, and then further to 10 and 11 million. What are we getting for that, and why is that? Is that really being prioritised over the other cuts, over like pools and libraries?
Is this operating or capital expenditure? Right. Okay. Well, obviously it's a strategic objective for council. I can't speak to the numbers you're quoting, sorry, councillor, but I know the envelope is 3.4 million to operate the team. We're focusing on 3 key areas. The first is resilience in our assets within the hazard areas, i.e. the South Coast, for example. The communities that sit and live in around those assets are going to be part of that council roadmap that you adopted this year, the community consultation and adaptation roadmap. We also have focus on this enterprise itself, so the work we do to make, i.e. lead by example, this council less carbon intensive. And the final piece is around the transport effort, so the behaviour change role and trying to get people to move to more and different types of transport as opposed to the private motor car. That's the bulk of where the 3.4 million operating cost is going next year.
Yeah, I do support our commitment to climate change. I'm just trying to understand why it's increasing over the $4 million that we've got for it now. You know, it's obviously going to use up more operating money at a time when we're scratching around for this. I just want to understand why it's increasing.
Just on the formally, and I think this year there is a larger budget, and that relates to funding we receive externally, but next year it drops down to as an operating budget of 3.4. But I think Andrea can talk.
We'll come back to you on the detail of the numbers in terms of,
Councillor Pannett.
Thank you for all your work. Siobhan, I have asked before, but when you come back around the city housing, just around the level of earthquake resilience we are providing to your tenants?
Oh, yeah, so we have some reports back, so I can just, we'll make sure.
In the Q&A?
Yep.
That would be excellent, and then I might need to come back to you and ask some questions, but that would be awesome. Andrea, just on the reading, I'm just wondering how much information will be made available to the public about the deal and what people will get for it.
So in terms of the decisions, those were made in PX. We have a commitment to release those papers once once we've reached a deal, we'll release that information.
Okay, so sorry, I'm obviously missing something. The money is in the budget?
So a long-term plan's based on the best available information. So we pull all that information together. So we make assumptions about what's going to happen in the future.
Okay.
That's why it's in there. Yeah.
Okay. Now, just my last question, and I might need some help from the chair, because and Baz, maybe this is for you. I've been around here a long time, as you know, and we have these long debates about whether we, save $200,000 from closing a library, and then the community kicks back and then we give it up. I'm just wondering, and some guidance from you, Chair, how much time we're going to spend on that, because it doesn't sound like there's actually any political or community support for these initiatives.
Seem like more of a political question, and my understanding is so we have a councillor-only session booked in for tomorrow morning, and my understanding is the Mayor is pulling together what some of her preferred options are, so that will give us the basis for discussion. But I agree with you in terms of spending a lot of time and energy worrying about something that might never happen.
And so thank you. So just it would be helpful to be talking about the water and the waste and the climate change. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
As most of you will know, there's been a lot of talk about the pools and the level of service in there. The feedback from the public has been very vocal, and so questions have been asked from several different people about, have we actually looking at the entrance fee for pools? And so instead of closing them or cutting the hours down, have we looked at doubling or tripling the entry fees so that they'll still stay open for those times?
So the entrance fees, Matt might be able to elaborate on this, but ultimately the higher the fee, the less people will use the pool. So there's a tipping point where you will end up disqualifying people because the fees are too high. But Matt might have some further to add on that.
James, it's Paul here, and Councillor through the chair. Yes, as James said, there is price sensitivity around pool access, and it's really important, we have our assets well utilised by the community. So in terms of our fee increases, we haven't looked at increasing our core fees, but we charge a lot of different fees in our pools area. So there's a range of increases across the fees and charges for pools. The pool admission is actually, in terms of the income we get from our pool activities, our fitness centres return the most income, then followed by our swimming programs, and then the general pool admission and those other fees make up the other component. So we always benchmark across the other councils, both regionally and across the country, to make sure that our pool fees, we continue to make those pools accessible to the community. We also offer leisure card discounts for people in the community for a range of those services as well. So we certainly want to keep those fees affordable and accessible to the community.
Thank you for that. There is a balance, though, of course, as you mentioned.
Question?
Yep. So the question is that we've been asked, can we actually research that, and can we actually even try increasing the fees to see if that patronage does actually lower?
Look, we can, but I suppose we know overall that the overall pool participation has been reasonably static. We've made significant capital investment, so there's been some growth, but I think there is quite a degree of price sensitivity around the cost of pool admission for our customers, and we can either increase volume or we can put fees up and have less people using our facilities. We would rather focus on volume and participation. And I suppose what we put forward to council is some service level changes in terms of our hours and days of operation that will have the least impact on our customer base. But I think putting up fees could have the impact of having less people using our facilities, and that wouldn't be a good outcome for ratepayers. It wouldn't be a good outcome for the community in terms of their health and well-being. So there is a balance there. We agree. We feel, and looking at our fees, looking at other councils' fees, that we've got that balance about right.
Sorry. So how do our fees compare with the other areas, say like Pororua and the Hutt?
So our fees are the highest in the region. We are quite high amongst metro councils as well. We are below Auckland Council for the adult entry, but their adult entry is all-encompassing of the likes of use of spas and saunas, where we generate additional revenue by charging additional costs to use those services. So we're sort of up there already at the moment. We're above the region and we're quite high across the country with our current fees. And as Paul said, that was one of the considerations we took into account when we did put the proposed fees that are before you as part of the revenue and financing and fee options. But we have looked to moderately increase our fees for our Learn to Swim for the private sector, and for Club Active, again, where we probably do have the ability to still provide a very, very good value service with a modest fee increase in those spaces.
Great, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Thune.
Thank you. Just a few practical questions. Just the waste minimisation seed fund for 100K. Can I just get, and I think I asked last week, just are we all good to carry on with that?
Chris, can you answer that?
I can ask another question while we wait.
We'll look into that, Laurie.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you. Just want to confirm the DIA funding, that is still all going toward the community adaptation engagements plans.
We go at that, Andrew?
So I'm not sure the email communication has yet come out from the Mayor's office around that. Has that been sent? Okay. So the Mayor is going to send out a communication around that matter separately to this. I think it's appropriate that she sends that first, and if you've got any other questions, I can answer that post this.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one is around just transitioning, and I know we haven't had our Let's Get Welly Moving meeting, but bus priority. So obviously there's some exciting work that could be done with north, south, east, west buses and prioritising those. Have we still got the money in the budget for that work to continue?
So it's yours. In city streets.
Yeah,
it's in the city streets that we've.
Right. Yeah, so that will still continue.
And just to clarify, so the eastern connections in the papers we presented earlier, you've got the second spine priority.
Yep.
So that's
Featherston, or
correct. Yep. Because of the volumes of buses there at the moment are almost at capacity, and connections out to east are the two priority projects that will
continue.
Yep.
Great, thank you, Liam.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out what the wastewater level of service is actually going to be. So looking on page 137, there's like lists of things which sort of need to be done, including the eastern trunk main, the airport waste and the pump station renewals, etc. But it's not clear to me what the preferred option is actually coming from the staff. it's not quite clear what you're actually recommending we do out of that list of things that look like they're fairly urgent. Page 137.
Yeah, that is everything. So that's going to include the option that we're proposing includes that.
So actually all of this is the preferred option to tick off all those things.
Yes.
Okay. And are we meeting, I have put this in the written one as well, but it really is bothering me. Are we actually investing in our Mob Point and our Western treatment plant? Are we investing at the level that Wellington Water have recommended?
So we're just finalising that program now, so we'll be able to tell you, hopefully within the next day or so, what isn't planned to be done at Mob Point, but we're doing most of it.
Okay, thank you.
My next questions were around Arapaki, and I'd be interested to, first of all, any kind of usage stats of Arapaki versus Te Awe, and in addition, I am wondering if we can have a little bit of a service element or more of a service element at Te Awe, so people that are currently going to Arapaki, and it doesn't have to be the full kit and caboodle, but access to a human that is kind of to be able to help with those service needs.
Sure, so the average number of people per day using Te Awe is 1,714. And that is actually the highest in the network. The second highest is Johnsonville, and Arapaki is the third highest at about 539 a day. So when we put the idea up of closing Arapaki Service Centre and Library, the thinking was that some of the savings would be utilised to add additional staffing to Te Awe to help with some of the remaining over-the-counter service inquiries that people were not able to do digitally or uncomfortable to do digitally.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Abdurrahman.
Just to follow up with Councillor Chang's question, I wonder how much will it cost to follow the Auckland footstep and making for under 16 or 18 to be specific, swimming free.
Through the chair, that's I'd need to try and do a bit of work on that to try and understand it, the implications. I suppose a key group that it would impact would be people that do book lanes as part of clubs, the likes of Capital Swim Club. That will be, it'll take me a bit of work, so I'll do my best to try and pull something together for you.
Cool. I got one more question for Stephen. In regards to phasing some of the projects, do you think some of the projects may be front-loaded? And a good example would be the electric vehicle fleets. In the first 2 years, we'll be putting some money, but from there on, it's nothing.
Andrea may wish to answer this, but what we've tried to do is smooth the capital program over the 10 years to stay within those limits. And for the first couple of years, it's fairly crowded because of Te Matapihi and Town Hall. So there really isn't a lot of headroom in those first 3 years for kind of too much more than the stated projects but there is scope further out, and that's what we've tried to smooth. Andrea?
That's entirely accurate. I think the first couple of years in the long-term plan, we are really finishing off the current capital program that's underway, and so a lot of that has already been committed through the Town Hall, through Te Matapihi, and of course there's always the ongoing renewals work that we have to do as well. So that's very much the focus in the first couple of years of the long-term plan, and then we've looked to phase our capital expenditure program after that. We always try and keep headroom in the outer years because, of course, there'll be other new councils coming in who want to be able to make decisions about where they want to head, and we also know that there are other things that we don't know we don't know now that we need to hold, hold some capacity for. So things like earthquake-prone buildings, any kind of asset failures, those kind of things. So we just need to be prudent in the out years as well.
Last question. Regardless to the sludge minimization levy, it's keep adding 3%, 4% every year. Is there any legislative framework that stops us from doing in a very long period of time that paying back the debt instead of making 4% every?
So the loan is booked in over 30 years now, and that is already within the infrastructure funding and financing agreement that we have. So that's already been committed to.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. Just getting back to Arapaki, was there any consideration given to what that would mean if we close that to that particular street in terms of reducing, people being on the street, from a safety, security perspective?
Not specifically, Councillor. Obviously, there's a fairly major bus stop just outside that location as well. But no, that wasn't a consideration.
Okay. And where is the Porniki Promise funding in the budget lines? I couldn't. Is that as a separate project, or is that merged into something else?
Raina here. I believe it is merged within activities, so it's not its own activity line that you'll be able to see, but the funding is within other activities.
Okay. Can we get some idea? Would that be able to? I mean, presumably it's a program of work. Could we get at some point in the next couple of days an idea of what funding is being tagged for that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you. That's all for the time being.
Councillor McNulty.
Cool. Just a quick one on water. So we are meeting 100% of Wellington Water's ask for capital funding for drinking water in this option 2 of the LTP. Is that correct?
Yep.
Nice. Option 3, sorry.
Option 3. Yeah.
Unlike me to make such a mistake. In terms of the level service provisions throughout the proposed through the long-term plan, not the other one, have they been aligned with projected population growth or the PDP at all? We've looked to design these measures, have we looked at the long-term of where we think people are going to go? So in terms of service cuts, have we basically said these are high growth areas, so we need to be more nuanced, or is it just a across the board straight approach?
So we did a number of different options. So, for example, with the pools changes in ours, we look very much at usage and population areas, and based on, I guess, current usage patterns that we've got. With the libraries, we had multiple different options. So one of the options that isn't the one that's actually included here was to look at those libraries that had the least usage. And also in consideration of the opening of a massive $200 million new facility, Central Library in the capital, in the centre of the city in 2 years' time, how much that would provide service and additional service for population growth, particularly around Central City. So those were all thought through in terms of the different options we came up with.
I was just going to add that, Councillor, that of the A to I, or A to L actually, of the list of service cut areas, there's really only a couple of them which were relevant to the question that you were raising, which was really around libraries and pools in terms of growth. Many of the others are kind of like the New Year's Eve event is not kind of in that same realm.
Right. Just a request for the suburban parking areas. Are we able to get as soon as possible the revenue maps and costs by suburb and how the data utilisation came together? The parking policy talks about 85% needing to be the trigger, so how that was covered. That's quite a broad request, so I won't
Thank you, Councillor. We're on to that. Hopefully get it into the Q&A.
Yeah, it's in the Q&A, so someone else has asked for that, so we'll get that.
Okay, and the last one, you might not be able to answer it, but how did we end up with, of the 5 proposed suburban parking areas, that 3 of them all fall into one single councillor ward?
I guess it's in the word suburban. Look, I think it's just that this is part of our activity centres network, so 2 metropolitans and our sub-centres, so these are our areas of most use by our community. It just happens to 3 of them fall into one ward.
Councillor Wineta.
I do hate to bring this up truly, but I just want to touch briefly on water meters. So can someone remind me again the total price tag that's proposed at the moment? 130. So I understand that so aside from the intent, maybe in the future, to switch on volumetric charging, I understand the primary rationalisation is it's good for understanding consumption and the state of the network, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, but the residential leaks that these would detect are quite a small proportion of the actual, or a small contributor to the actual leaks in the network. I understand Wellington Water keeps like a list of the dozen, big regional leaks that are the worst offenders. So can you provide me some clarity over that?
Yeah, but we don't have the metrics to basically confirm what those proportions are. So, we've got Chris has turned up. Do you want to comment, Chris?
Oh, hi, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to wait for Wellington Water to complete the options analysis and the implementation plan, because they don't know what they don't know at the moment. They don't have any idea how much water is being leaked versus consumed. So I think we need to allow them time to actually complete that. I'm not going to call it a business case. I'm going to call it an options analysis that will inform it.
Roger. Okay. So just to be clear, you're saying that we're actually not sure that residential leaks are dwarfed to the nth degree by these major regional leaks. Is that correct?
What I'm saying is, without water meters, there's always a level of estimation involved, and by Wellington Water's own feedback is that this is their best level estimate. So we have to go with it, but it's always tricky when you don't have detailed information that water meters could provide.
Okay, and then final part of this question, do we have a time frame on when that options analysis might be completed, roughly?
I've asked Wellington Water for this time frame. They are considering it, and it's up to them to come back to us now.
Roger, thank you, Chris.
Right.
Councillor Pannett.
Going to get back to us about the numbers of the Heritage Advisory Service. I did ask you before, will that
That's
be?
right, you're including it in the Q&A
okay,
as well.
That's awesome, thank you. And James, just about Arapaki, so as I understand it, you're expecting that those librarians currently employed will be going to the new library. So does that mean if we cut it, that they'll lose their jobs and then you'll have to go and re-recruit?
No. You mean when they, for the numbers for Te Matapihi? Is that what you mean for the?
Yeah, so in other words, we might save some money for a year, but then we're going to need librarians in the new library, obviously.
Correct.
Okay, so is there any way of kind of keeping them on but still trying to save a bit of money, or is it just not really?
Can I just say through you, Chair, obviously a suite of level of service reduction proposals imply some impact on staff, but we must follow a good employer process, not in public. And I think it would be difficult for us to answer questions like that here, because we clearly have to go through a proper process. So step one is the Council's decision on Thursday. Do you wish to consult on any of these level of service reduction proposals or not? And depending on that decision, we'll start a process of looking more carefully at what that means for our people. But I cannot make any commitment about that.
Yeah, so look, I completely understand that. The problem for me is that information will influence my decision. So, okay, so that might help inform my vote. But okay, so there's no way to kind of at least give that advice in some way about trimming the service?
Yeah, through you, Chair, you should assume that there is a relationship between the size of our full-time equivalent staff and the levels of service we provide and the program of work that the Council approves us to do. So there will be a relationship between the two, but we undertake a proper good employer process once we know what your decision is. Yeah.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Cool. I just tried to go through the paper, but I couldn't find anywhere where it talks about the Carrara Park toilet funding. Is that somewhere? Is that something that I'm missing, or can you just direct me to that? Because we passed an amendment in this council that to be included in the long-term plan.
We'll have to come back to you and just double check that, Councillor. Which park was it, sorry?
Carrara Park.
Carrara Park. It should be in there, given that was agreed to, but it could be buried, and we'll just confirm that where that is sitting in the budget line.
Cool. I might be going a bit deep into it, but I just want to know also, when we put in Island Bay, say paid parking, where exactly officers are thinking? Is that just on the parade or just all over? What exactly are we talking about? The paid parking in Island Bay?
That's an early question, Councillor. That's an early question, so that'll be in the Q&A doc. We kind of provide an area location for each of those centres, where it's best of our ability anyway, about where those meters might go in.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. The first question is about the water and actually how people will pay for the increased investment in the water. It's a simple question, really. Are we going to fund it by increasing the water rates for individual households, or are we going to fund it by increasing the general rates and handing the money over?
It would be funded through water rates. That's per our revenue and financing policy.
Okay, thank you. It's, just was a bit confused about it because it's quite a lot of money. And so people, would expect their water rates to go up, and some people who aren't even on the system won't have that impact.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. The lucky minority. Second question is about the Tikanga housing program. I noticed that the Tikanga housing program is going to increase its dependency on rate subsidies rather than reducing it. Is that's not really the outcome or objective of the program? Can someone explain why?
Look, the answer lies in the forecasting, I suspect, Councillor. We've got an objective to get 1,000 units in 5 years, I think, is the recent target, and we're growing our portfolio as we go. The matter that you're referring to, I think, has also been subject of a previous briefing as well. Andrew might have some other points to make.
Yeah, so as we kind of spoke about earlier, my understanding is that the netting off doesn't equal each year. So there is a timing delay of when that netting off happens. Yeah.
Yeah, as we build our portfolio, it doesn't time to your financial year.
Correct, yeah, and that's why you have the difference.
Okay. I notice in terms of the libraries and the pools, which are, subject to possible cuts, the actual amounts that are being spent on them is going up by about $4 million each a year. Can you explain why we're paying more for pools but we're having to cut service possibly?
It's primarily the running costs of the facility, particularly for pools. So utilities in particular for pools has gone up quite considerably. And then there's standard inflation on FTE salary, etc.
Thanks. Do I go on the list again?
Yep. You can put you back on. Councillor Calvert.
I'd just like to have a better understanding in terms of asset sales and airport shares. Is there what happens if we decide not to do that? Yeah. What's the budget implications?
So there is no budget implications per se. What it does do is obviously we've got investment income from the airport that's factored in across the 10 years of the plan. In terms of looking ahead to if we were to have a PIF, or a perpetual investment fund, we would be looking at probably stronger returns a wee bit earlier on, but the airport is forecasting strong dividends across the 10 years of the plan. So there's very little impact from that revenue perspective. I guess the key thing is our financial strategy is predicated on us managing our debt including the insurance headroom in the first few years. If we move to having this perpetual investment fund, we can be a bit more flexible with the options that we have there, and that means that we've got more headroom in our debt capacity to focus on core services. So it really does come down to our financial strategy.
But what about like asset sales? Because part one of this is selling assets to pay for the coffee, the operating costs.
So those asset sales are not. They shouldn't be confused with the airport. So the airport.
No,
sales,
I know they're separate. Yeah,
is completely separate. So the airport and the ground leases are completely separate, except for where ground leases have been earmarked for other purposes. So that would go into the perpetual investment fund. We still have a portfolio of a significant property portfolio, and Siobhan might want to answer some of this, that delivers non-core non-strategic, well, it doesn't deliver any council services actually. And, part of the 9th of November decision was to look at, divesting Shed 1, Shed 5, those kind of things. That's the kind of thing that we'd be looking at for the offsetting the rates.
So do we have, it may be in the papers, but I couldn't see it, how much we're planning on using to offset the rates?
We haven't included that in the papers because we didn't want to release commercially sensitive information around the properties and that, but if we wanted to, we could add it into Q&A and mark that as confidential.
Yeah, well, or at least a sum, a figure. You can give us a total sum, approximate total sum. That would be fine. I don't need to know the things. That would be helpful.
Yeah, we were looking. Sorry, Councillor, we were looking at say $8 million in that regard.
$8 million.
Correct.
Okay. So. On Thursday, could this council agree not to go out and consult on asset sales and selling the airport shares if it chose to?
I think you would need to revoke the decision that was made earlier.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty.
Just as my colleague here has jogged my head around water meters, Chris, this options analysis, my understanding is that there's a bit of views around the region around whether we actually even need to own water meter infrastructure, if that's the cheapest way, if it can be delivered as a service. So I just want to double check if we do an options analysis, it's going to review those types of settings, what's actually the most effective, cost, fastest, blah, blah, blah way to get these installed.
Absolutely. So that's exactly what one of the things the options analysis will uncover.
Cool, that was great. And just caught the utilities increase in pools. So I know we voted to take out the decarbonisation at the last LTP, but is that the type of expense that actually is driving up those operating costs?
Certainly part of it, correct.
And so they're currently gas powered. Is there a competitive market there? Are we on one supplier? What's the situation?
I'd have to see if Matt and Paul are still on the line to answer that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, James. So in terms of gas, we are moving to single supply from a commercial perspective, and the information that the energy manager has been given has predicted a significant rise over time. For electricity, he's expecting a more stable price for that component. Swimming pools are both the biggest user of electricity and gas for the organisation.
Thank you.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, with the water meters, I wonder if there's any merit in getting a case study done on how Kapiti rolled out theirs and whether they ended up saving money. by not having to treat as much water? Because
I think there's been a number of case studies undertaken on Kapiti and some of the information on that. As part of my previous role, I know there was a performance audit that looked at that by the Office of the Auditor General, and that was found to have saved significant amounts of money.
can we maybe just, if you're able to send
A link?
send a link?
Yep.
I feel like we need a little bit of something to look at to see how it actually happens in practice.
Yeah.
My other thing is, I know we've got to this point and, we're here, but I still feel very nervous that there might be some other big blocks we have to take out to afford more money for water infrastructure and that sort of thing. Is it possible to have a list of things that could still be up for consideration to not do? Big things.
Council, we've been given the advice already. CapEx or OpEx?
CapEx probably, OpEx is so tricky, but the grant funding, I'm not sure I felt we had a really good look at that, to be honest.
I guess the thing is that we have gone through that process around the capital program back in November, I think it was. Pretty extensive look at that in, as we said before, trying to smooth that CapEx program over the 10 years, given everything that people wish to see in there. Ultimately, though, it's a decision of the council, I guess, on Thursday as to this package, and if you're wanting to do something else, then you'd have to really land that on Thursday, because what we need to do is go away and build a consultation document, and that comes back in fairly quick time frame in March in order for it to go off to audit and be consulted on in April. So I think unless there's something very specific that you can actually move as something that you wanted to add to the list or take off that list, Thursday's the day to do that.
A really broad question of the community in that case as to whether they think there are other things we should stop doing.
Well, I think I'll get Baz to talk about this, and we're still a little way away from bringing that back, obviously, but when we consult, we've got our three big topics to consult on, which we've highlighted, being the airport sale, the changes in waste, and the greater investment in water. There's a whole lot of other things around around the context of that we asked for feedback, and clearly service level changes would be part of that, and people are free to kind of add to that, suggest other things, or give us their views about what they think about the things we have proposed. So ultimately, when you deliberate in May and then make decisions towards the end of June, that's where you have kind of got to weigh all of those things up and finally land on something.
And I guess I want to endorse Councillor McNulty's question around the various different ways of approaching the meter question. Is it possible for us to have some options, like not smart meters, for example?
Not in time for the consultation.
No, and we'd likely collect the information. The process from here is to collect that background information to then inform the next consideration by the council, and then a discussion with the community on what they want. So it would be part of another consultation process, but we wouldn't be able to do it in time for this long-term plan. But that's certainly yes, okay. It would be an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you. Just on the water meters, just on the options around water, there are three options there which are essentially do a basic amount plus water meters, or do a basic amount plus water meters and some further investment. Could a fourth option please be added that would have do more investment but excluding water meters, so that people who want more investment in water but don't necessarily agree that water meters are required would have an ability to inform us properly?
I think a really important aspect of this is something that we're doing across the region as well, and so it is a regional decision to look at the water meters as well, so we need to be in step with what other councils are doing, and that is part of the advice that we've been given from Wellington Water in terms of actually managing our water supply issues. So we don't think it's a reasonably practicable option to decouple that.
The other thing, Councillor, is that if people have got a view on whether they support or don't support water meters, then they're able to provide that in their submissions on those options that we put up.
I think the key last point I'd make on that is the optioneering process, the planning work that will be done in the city and regionally, and is planned for in the draft long-term plan, will ultimately be when the final decision is made. So the decision is really about proceeding to the next stage of planning and defining the options at a much more detailed level.
And providing the funding to do that.
So.
Funding provision.
So can officers outline that if someone does want to maximise the investment in water but does not support water meters, which option should they choose and how will that be identified?
I think in reality, individuals would make submissions on those options and put that caveat themselves around, yes, I support option 3 but not water meters, or I support option 2 but not water meters, as opposed to having to be other comments for them to add that.
I think Councillor Randall is making a reasonable point. It's not necessarily a redesign of the option, but when we go to look at the design of the consultation form, whether we could take these concerns into consideration.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the public has the full opportunity to inform us of their views on a significant decision. Okay, so thank you. Second thing is talked about the cost increase in libraries and pools. Even significant amounts are not keeping pace with the ability for us to deliver the service. There's a lot of budgets whose nominal cost hasn't changed. So does that mean that there's an implied somewhat small reduction in service or ability because we're not adjusting those budgets for cost increases?
Some of the activities that you'll see in those reports don't have any depreciation costs. They may not also have costs for utilities. So we're seeing big increase in utility costs. For example, that's why swimming pools and libraries are going up quite significantly, as well as depreciation, interest and insurance costs. So if any activity doesn't necessarily have any assets that it's servicing, you won't see as high cost increases as others.
Recognising that one of the key principles in preparing this long-term plan was that we, wherever possible, we hold our costs to the prior years and we absorb the impact of the costs of doing that, recognising that we needed to cut our cloth as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, I'm probably going to cut you off there because we're nearly out of time and I've got other speakers on the list. So if you have unanswered questions, we can either do them on Wednesday or add to the written questions. Councillor Calvert, you have your hand up. Is it a new hand?
No, sorry, I didn't put it down.
No,
sorry about that.
That's all good. Okay. I'll go to Councillor Chung because he hasn't asked many.
Just going back to, I was just thinking about, I think what Siobhan said before about Wellington Airport has actually given a projection of the dividends, projected dividends, sorry, was that? Oh, sorry, okay. They've given a projected estimate of the dividends. This is a changing market, so have we actually compared what that dividend would be against any likely investment return?
Yes, we have. We're doing that work now to inform the consultation document that we're preparing. At the moment, those dividends are relatively similar to what we would receive in terms of an investment for a perpetual investment fund. Recognising, of course, we're not saying that the investment in the airport is a bad thing, actually. I just want to clarify that because it's a good investment. The challenge that we've got is it's all sitting in one bucket and we're looking to diversify. That's the reason we're looking to sell the shares, not because we think it's a bad investment. It does return those dividends, but when there are shocks and things like COVID, all our income is tied up with that particular asset, as opposed to being diversified across an asset portfolio, which is what we're wanting to achieve.
Quick one, Deputy Mayor Foon.
It's two really quick ones. ETS, noting the increase, has the decarbonisation, is that factored into our pools budget line, the increase of ETS? Where do we put that?
Not sure, we'll have to come back to you on that one.
Yeah. Okay. And just another one around if the organics removal doesn't go ahead, have we got some light modelling of what ETS increases would look like as well?
Yeah, that would couple that in with the same question. Thank you.
Lucky last, quick, Councillor McNulty.
Just wondering if we've had any formal advice from the government that they expect water meters to City Council at this point?
No, nothing formal.
So, written Q&A, sorry anybody that didn't get any answers, but I think that was everybody got some. Thank you to the team. Also, the session on Wednesday, it would be wonderful if there was an opportunity to discuss amendments at that point, if you have amendments. That's one of the reasons why we have a session booked in the day before the meeting. So that would be great if we could get advice and be able to ask questions about amendments. So thank you very much.
Yes. That. Obviously, some of the amendments will be highly political, and can we just be clear about then what looks like officer advice coming into a political debate?
I'm always clear about that, Councillor, and I will make sure I chair accordingly.
Sorry, I'm not getting at you. I'm just a little bit concerned that this is part of the debate about.
It won't be part of the debate, but we do ask questions of officers about amendments, including our own amendments. So I think it would be useful to do that. I think possibly people have held on amendments and kind of left it all to the day, and I think it would be good to get some of those questions. I'm very clear about what the distinctions are here, and we won't be drawing staff into our political debate. However, we do need information about the implications of amendments. Thank you, team. Cheers.